Islam Makhachev has been dethroned. Ilia Topuria is now officially the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, according to the UFC rankings. He rose up 2 spots above Islam. Now Islam's #2, Merab is 3, Dricus is 4, and Pantoja is 5. Could he be above Dricus? Maybe. But I'm happy enough that he's at least in the top 5. No complaints there. Honestly, man, I can see Ilia being #1. I can see it. I don't have too much of an argument one way or another, except for one thing. I guess it depends on how JDM versus Islam goes. If Islam beats JDM, then he's probably going to be #1 after. Ilia's a 2-division champion. What does pound for pound mean? Skills that can translate to different weight classes. Pretty much if everybody was the same weight class, who is the best fighter? Moving to different weight classes is a key point in that. Islam hasn't done that yet. Ilia has done that twice in his career, and now just won the lightweight title in the first round against Charles Oliveira, who Islam of course beat. There is that argument that Islam already beat Charles when he was champion. But Ilia did it as a featherweight moving up to lightweight. Islam was always a lightweight. That's why it's different. In my opinion, Ilia is above Islam because of 2 things. #1, he moved up and won a second belt. And secondly, it's the way that Ilia is winning his fights. I think this whole debate between Ilia and Islam is confused by one main thing. People are comparing their wins as if they weren't in different weight classes. Like people are saying Islam and Ilia both beat Volk and they both beat Charles, and Dustin's a better win than Max. That is true if they all did that in the same weight class, but they're a weight class apart. They didn't do it in the same division. Ilia moving up to the next weight class and knocking out Charles could be argued to be better than Islam beating Charles in his own division, right? Because Ilia moved up. So that's why I could see Ilia being #1 above Islam. And of course, Islam beat Renato Moicano, and he beat Thiago Moises and Bobby Green and Drew Dober and some other decent fighters like B-tier fighters, whereas Ilia beat Josh Emmett, Bryce Mitchell, and Yusuf Zalal. So the Armin win for Islam is actually one of the main selling points in Islam being #1 above Ilia, because all the other wins are comparable, right? Like you could compare the Charles wins, you can compare the Dustin versus Max wins and the Volk wins and all that stuff, right? Ilia beat Josh Emmett, which is better than Bobby Green and Thiago Moises and Renato Moicano and those guys. But Islam beat Armin. True, it was Armin's UFC debut on short notice, so of course not the best version of Armin at all. I mean, Armin even lost to Gamrot later. But I think it is a really good debate. If I were to pick who I would have #1, I would lean to Ilia because he moved up and won a second belt. I think that's the breaking point. And Islam has his opportunity to do that right now. He's going to be fighting JDM. And if he beats JDM, I think he's #1 pound for pound. I think it's fair enough, right? If Islam loses the JDM, then for sure he's not above Ilia. So I agree with Ilia, Islam, Merab, Dricus over Pantoja. I can see it. Just in the UFC, Pantoja beat Kai Kara-France twice, if we count the Ultimate Fighter, Kai Asakura, Steve Erceg, Brandon Royval twice, Brandon Moreno 3 times, twice if we don't include the Ultimate Fighter, and only the 1 Moreno win if we're just looking at the most recent reign that they have, right? Because he beat Moreno the 2nd time in 2018. And of course, that wasn't the same Moreno that he fought in the 3rd fight. 3rd fight Moreno was prime Moreno, one of the best flyweights ever. Alex Perez and Manel Kape. So we compare that to Dricus' wins. He beat Sean Strickland twice, Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, Derek Brunson, and I guess Darren Till, maybe? I would say middleweight Darren Till and Alex Perez are comparable. Welterweight Darren Till might be better, but I think Dricus just doesn't have enough big wins. Like, he has very big wins in Adesanya, Whittaker, and Strickland twice. I don't know. It does look a lot more debatable, especially if we're not including the first 2 Moreno wins and the first Kai win. If we include those 3, then obviously Pantoja's above him, but if we're only looking at the Manel Kape fight to now, then I think it is a lot more debatable. And again, I don't know how the UFC looks at it because John Jones was top 3 for so long, and I don't know what the criteria was for John Jones to be top 3. I would put Pantoja above Dricus, then I might have Merab above him, but I guess those 3 are debatable. Because even Merab, right, being O'Malley, Umar, Cejudo, and Aldo, like, very good wins, but some of those guys were not in their prime, like Cejudo and Aldo. They were not in their prime when they fought Merab, and Dricus beat all of these guys in their prime, except arguably Darren Till. Adesanya was in his prime, Strickland was in his prime, Whittaker was in his prime. But crazy enough, man, about Ilia Topuria, you guys see he's on the biggest sports magazine in Spain. He's the front cover of the biggest sports magazine, where they have the biggest football teams in the world. Ilia is the front cover, and the viewership of his Charles fight rivaled Real Madrid numbers. That is so crazy. And he is now the most followed UFC fighter on Instagram. Now, people are saying that he's behind followers. I don't know, but he's a huge star right now. And it would be a shame if the UFC never had a fight in Spain for him. It looks like obviously the fans over there want to see him fight in one of their stadiums, and they're not going to have him fight over there? Come on, man. Like, why miss out on that opportunity? Yeah, they're scheduled a lot of sports events, but I'm pretty sure whoever's running those stadiums would definitely want Ilia Topuria fighting there. It seems like right now, Ilia Topuria is the face of the UFC. Pound for pound #1. He has one of the most viral knockouts in UFC history. Statistically, undefeated, two-way world champion, the 3 best win streak in UFC history. And the guy's doing all of this before he's even 30. The man might not even be in his prime. He's what, 28? Most featherweights and lightweights hit their prime in their early 30s. Ilia might be 3 years away from his prime, dude. Look what he's doing to all these legends, and he might not even be at his best. We haven't seen him in his final form yet, and it just seems like him and Islam are in this race against each other to be the face of the UFC and to be the best UFC fighter right now. That fight has to eventually happen. No matter what, in the highest skilled fight, 2 of the best streaks going against each other, well-rounded skill sets. And if Islam beats JDM, 2 double-weight world champions, going up against each other, and imagine that's in Spain or some big stadium, that is the biggest fight the UFC could possibly put on. By far, the only thing that could come close is if Khamzat destroys Dricus and he becomes the biggest superstar. Because that is possible. Khamzat is such a big star and he has not even won a belt yet, which is crazy. Ilia had to win 2 belts to become as big as he is. Khamzat's almost that big without ever winning a belt, so he's the only guy that could possibly be bigger than both Islam and Ilia, just off of 1 more win. And when they do the fight, you already know the UFC is going to put that on pay-per-view, regardless if they go to a streaming service like Netflix. They're going to do it somehow. That's too big of a fight for them to not milk every pay-per-view buyout. They're going to try to make the most money out of that fight as possible. But we got to wait until the JDM and Islam fight, and then depending on if Islam wants to defend his title there first or move to lightweight again. It's crazy, man. Ilia Topuria is taking over the UFC, and the man made his UFC debut 4.5 years ago. October of 2020, he fought in Abu Dhabi against Yusuf Zalal and beat him by decision. And before that, he only had 1 knockout win. All the rest were submissions. The guy came into the UFC as a grappler, and after his UFC debut, 6 knockouts. Crazy Josh Emmett lasted 5 rounds with this guy. Don't know how he did it. Ilia was lighting that man up, and he stayed in the fight somehow. The guy even raised his hand after the 5th round like he won. That's a win for himself right there. If you could just not get knocked out, it's as if you won in some way. I mean, look at Charles, Max, and Volk. These guys all got obliterated less than 3 rounds in. Emmett lasted 5 rounds with this guy. The man is so dominant that merely just not getting knocked out is something to celebrate. It's not a matter of who can beat Ilia, but rather who can last the longest against him. Josh Emmett got 50-42'd out there, knocked down 3 times, face mashed up like potatoes, but he lasted with this guy. Insanity. Josh Emmett is one of the toughest fighters we have ever seen, just merely off that fact alone. But 4.5 years into the UFC, 2-way world champion, decapitated 3 legends, and is still undefeated. This is a different level of domination that we've seen since like Khabib. The last guy that might have been more dominant than Ilia, or at least comparable, was Khabib. It's crazy. Ilia is like around that level or close to that level of dominance, right? He's lost some rounds here and there and he's got knocked down before and bruised up and stuff, so maybe not as dominant as Khabib, but if that's the only other guy above him in dominance, the most dominant fighter in UFC history, that along with Ilia's legacy is very special.